For anyone on the job market right now, or if you're on the flip side hiring, it really feels like something massive has changed. More applications, more candidates, more overload on both sides of the market. Everyone has their favorite explanation. Is it AI? Is it just the fluctuating market? I'm Aaron Terrasas, a practitioner economist who really loves reconciling economic theory with the messy reality of real world business practice. And I'm trying to disentangle the truth from the fear and the spin to really understand how AI has and hasn't changed the labor market. With that goal, I invited my friend Amy Crook to walk me through the nuts and bolts of how AI has changed hiring from a recruiter's perspective. What's the current state of art and where there are still frictions yet to address. We're having a series of conversations about each step in the hiring process and are sharing some of the highlights here. My goal is to learn how AI is changing hiring from the inside out. Here's a little bit about Amy in her own words.
Hi everyone, I'm Amy Crook, and I've been a recruiting leader for about 20 plus years, building teams across various tech spaces. These days, I lead an HR and recruitment consultancy, Stratavis. Check us out. So I've been seeing firsthand how hiring decisions, good and bad, shape the trajectory of a business. So I'm really excited to dive into this topic with Aaron.
Thanks, Amy. I'm excited to have you. Let's dive in. Hey, Amy, and hey, everyone who's watching. Welcome back to our second episode on how AI is changing the job market and hiring and recruiting. I'm really excited to dive into the second conversation about interviewing. And interviewing is obviously kind of the high stakes part of this process. So, so let's kind of start at, something very simple, very obvious in the background of all these AI changes, I think is really a massive shift in how we interview, in that it's often virtual now.
Mm.
You no more pretending to be sick and taking a sick day to
Yeah,
travel to go to an interview
yeah,
or sneaking out in the afternoon early to go interview. Um, in my opinion, this is huge. It
yeah.
moving from a real world to an online space increases, sure, like the number of folks you can interview, the number of,
Mhm.
times, but it also increases the opportunity for data collection. And that's really where my mind goes in economists. You think of the data boom and the data science and ML and AI boom that happened when commerce shifted from brick and mortar retail to
Mhm.
e-commerce. Suddenly, you know a lot more about the candidates. It's easier to record and to track. So, in my mind, the shift, the pandemic era shift that predates the AI boom by a couple of years, so
Mhm.
online and interviewing really kind of opens up kind of a whole new world of data, ML, and AI applications in the this space. So with that preface, kind of let's start with something simply stupid. Scheduling. In my experience, this is wildly impactful. Um, as a
Yes.
recruiter in the days of old, how much time did you actually spend kind of coordinating schedules? At a couple of places I worked, we used to have more junior folks dedicated just to scheduling.
That's
Do
right.
those roles even exist anymore?
A little bit, because there's still some complexities that come up, especially if you're talking like a panel interview with multiple calendars to manage. So it can come up that it does need um, a human eye to make sure that actually the t dates and times are available. But it's becoming more and more sophisticated at such a rapid rate. You've got tools that are able to, they've created like an AI scheduler who's able
Yeah.
to actually have those conversations with the hiring managers and the candidate to coordinate the time, and you don't need
That's
a person.
fantastic. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think of the time saved being able to click on someone's, Calendly link or whatever and pick your block of time. Um, that's, it reduces email, it reduces kind of back and forth. So,
Yeah,
I love these examples of, you know, the wildly simple kind of but like
the big
massively
impact.
important ways. Yeah.
Yeah,
No one
yeah.
loves like, oh, I'm available Wednesday at 2. Are you available Wednesday at 2? No one likes that
No, no
email
one
thread.
likes that.
Yeah.
No one does. But I do wonder, and maybe this is just, the 1900s in me, that it was kind of exciting when you were looking for work and someone picked up the phone and was like, "Hey, you got an interview."
Yeah.
And it's like, "Oh, I did." No, that's not that. You're checking your emails, clicking your links, scheduling your stuff. And I think that's fine as long as you've built something around that scheduling process that still makes the candidate feel supported. A lot of these tools are great for scheduling the time, date, getting the information, links out to the right people, but not all of them have what I've been told are called journey pages, right? So like
Mm.
candidates as they're going through the interview journey can still get some additional information if they have questions about the organization. Maybe you're able to answer a few like high level things on there, put videos on there from the recruiters just to kind of talk a little bit more about the organization, put some bespoke information in there about who they're going to be meeting
Mm.
and what tips and tricks you can share with the candidate to be more prepared for that interview. I think those bits are really important for candidate experience, but they're not the norm yet.
Yeah, and it all sounds like something that AI is not necessarily particularly adept at, kind of creating
Well,
those
they can push
custom.
it out. They can push it
Yeah.
out, but you've got to load the information. You've got to
Mhm.
set the when and the what the information is provided, and it's some scheduling tools just aren't built that way.
Sure. No, totally. Um, Anything else where you think kind of on the coordination part, kind of AI kind of has applications, um, you know, uh, or is that kind of the scheduling
No,
part?
I
That's
think it's
it.
good.
Yeah.
I think it's great. It's very efficient, very effective. Just again, from that hiring
Yeah.
perspective, you do lose that connection point with the
Yep.
candidate. But again, we're in the age where who cares about the candidate anyway? It
Fair
doesn't-
enough. Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do think the tools that offer those journey
Yeah.
pages are well worth investing
No.
in.
No, totally. And again, like this point that um online interviewing, kind of video interviewing, it as an economist, it increases liquidity in the market. And in my mind, that is, has opened up opportunities for people, kind of made it a much more frictionless process so people can apply to
Yep,
more roles. And so when we talk about the deluge of candidates and people are quick to point the finger at ChatGPT and resumes and CVs and cover letters. Um, I think this is so much more important. Kind of online interviewing and
I
video interviewing.
agree.
It's just opened up roles, made it a lot easier to apply and interview for roles than it used to be. The next kind of step, after coordinating schedules, of course, is usually for many roles at least some kind of technical assessment. And we
Hmm.
talked in our last episode about those kill questions, kind of
Hmm.
days of yore. It feels like this is like that the modern version of that, kind of a longer, more extensive technical skill assessment, often automated, kind of sometimes done asynchronously. Um, you know, tell me about kind of your experience with some of these tools that do automated evaluation of technical skills.
Yeah. So I've seen both sides of these tools being implemented. They're a great time saver. You are basically buying an off-the-shelf product that you can send to your candidate, and you'll be able to see their workings and make a decision on their capabilities based on the results. Unfortunately, um, they are also um, vulnerable to people. I don't like the word cheating, but using tools that are available to maybe uh, oversell their capabilities. Um, and also, as crazy as it sounds, if you're sending a link to a test, um, some people have been known to have somebody else take the test for them.
Mm.
And then you end up hiring somebody who doesn't necessarily have those capabilities. I think what I've seen be more successful as we've gone through this kind of arch of, okay, technical assessments are the thing now. That's what we want to do. And then, oh no, we've seen all these vulnerabilities and we don't know what to do about them too. Then organizations doing them using technology to help them, but doing those technical assessments live
Hmm.
with the person. And the technical assessments being less like they used to be back in the day about like, you know, I don't know, writing a ton of code in X amount of time or like fixing this problem or whatever, but more um, around assessing people's thought processes, how
Mhm.
they can take in data and process that information and make a decision on a pathway forward. They're the things that I think people are interested in understanding from candidates. So then having something that's done live, so there's no opportunity for shenanigans, and then changing the dynamic of that assessment to be more around that critical thinking skill set than it is about just the straight up execution. Because, when you get into your workplace now, particularly if you're in a technical role that's going to be using those skills, likelihood is you're going to have a lot of tools in your tech stack that are going to help you do that execution. But how do you solve for the needing the ideas, needing the thinking for a different way forward when something's not working as planned? That's the value that those people are bringing to the organizations now, less about just the, yeah, I can get this code done in X amount of time and there's minimal errors.
Yeah, no, I mean, some of these hurdles or challenge from a technical perspective aren't necessarily insurmountable. Things like identity verification. You can kind of ask candidates to show an ID and then kind of monitor through their camera. I think kind of obviously I think there are solutions to that. There was a great New York Times kind of podcast several months ago
Uh-huh.
around this kind of student at Columbia University, and it was in the media and headlines who kind of developed a tool to help him kind of succeed in some big tech technical assessments. And obviously, kind of on surface level, everyone can agree that faking your skills, pretending your skills is not helping anyone in the long term. You really
Right.
listen to some of the conversations with this young man, and it's fascinating because it sounds like part of the core complaint is that the skills they were assessing for aren't relevant to the job.
Well,
In
that's a
the era of
problem.
LLMs,
Yeah.
anyone who's used kind of a coding assist knows how much easier it's become. You don't
Right.
need to memorize kind of commands like you used to. You certainly need a knowledge and a high level working kind of sense of data structures and all that. But
No, you
coding
just
has
need to be good at
changed.
prompting.
Right.
Yes.
And so, I think kind of it's, on the one hand, easy to dismiss kind of this kind of shenanigans as kind of gamesmanship. On the other hand, I think there was like a core complaint there that there's a disconnect between the assessments and the actual work. Um,
Yeah. No, I agree. And that's why the leaders that I've really respected the most over my career are the ones that have taken the time to create something that is less about, like I said, that execution, what's the output, and more about how do you think through this? Like
yeah.
what we've given you this information, how how does your mind work to solve this problem? I think that's a much better measure of how effective somebody's going to be in your organization now that you've got all these tools to help you with the execution.
Yeah, yeah, no, no, absolutely. And so to your point, it feels like some of the frictions and the cat and mouse stuff that we're seeing in the space right now is more about talent acquisition, catching up with kind of the state of practice in these roles as they evolve with AI. And so I think kind
Hmm.
of that's the next frontier. So beyond technical assessments, obviously, kind
Hmm.
of most interviews kind of include one, if not multiple behavioral interviews, kind of conversations with a hiring manager, kind of a stakeholder, kind of a technical peer to
Hmm.
kind of to do kind of those more qualitative assessments. And let's put aside kind of using LLMs and kind of tools in the actual interview. I think there's enormous promise here. Not, this is one of the areas I am personally most excited about. And I wanted to pick your brain on because interviewer
Hmm.
consistency, every place I've worked, kind of this is just such a huge challenge, particularly in rapid growing organizations where you have junior people, kind of people relatively new to the company, conducting high stakes interviews. You don't know what's going on. Then you come into a debrief and people will say a couple things, they'll jot down a few notes. You just, you kind of trust them, maybe you don't. And so that,
Hmm.
that leads to, I think this is one of the areas where you kind of really kind of deviate from good decision making
Hmm.
consistently. Um, and going to my point that, the online interviewing opens up all sorts of doors for data collection and evaluation. We can
Hmm.
get a lot better at evaluating interviewers with online interviewers. Is anyone thinking about that? How's kind of, have you seen any applications about of this?
I haven't seen anything from an AI perspective that's, uh, really significantly changed how an interviewer shows up, but I have seen um, between the combination of technology and the talent acquisition team, providing a little guidance, getting people to crispen up a little bit on what they're actually assessing for. And you're right, panels are all over the place. I think, that there's definitely needs to be conversations that take place internally in organizations to, what is the value add here of this person taking part in the interview. And then, there's something to be said about just even giving that person who is part of the panel an area to explore. And then, they can plug that into a LLM and like get their questions and that it will give you your question and what you should be looking for in an answer. So I think from an interviewer perspective, there's not anything specific that I would guide you to, but if you are confident in what you're there to assess, use the tools that we have to have a thoughtful conversation with somebody that's going to have like open questions that will give you an idea of who that person is and how they operate in their work. And on the flip side of that, I think a lot of people struggle to sound as polished in their interview as they do in their written word because we have so much help and assistance. But don't stop there with where you're using your LLM. You can put in your key successes, or you can, put in a piece of work that you've done and have your LLM give you a good narrative or like, a good pitch as to why that was a successful piece of work that you've done. And it will give you pointers on how to be more succinct and how to deliver that information in a way that's digestible to the listener. Because I even get to the interview, and that's such a big hurdle right now that I think people are just like, well, I'm just going to talk about my experience. That's going to be enough. But um, being able to articulate what you've done in a clear and concise way, to your point, with somebody who may have no idea what you do, you have to be prepared for that. Um, but going back to what I said in episode one, though, if you get an interviewer that turns up totally unprepared, asks you weird questions, turn them down. Like feel empowered to turn them down. There's no reason with every resource that we've got available to us now that somebody can't take the time to even just plug in your resume into ChatGPT and say, give me the highlights of this person. It takes seconds.
Mhm.
So if they're not willing to invest that time in you,
That's a
when
signal.
they're just, yeah, it's a huge red flag,
Mhm.
is
Yeah,
what I would
no,
say.
no, totally. Kind of, there is that part of it. Thinking about some of the tools that you mentioned, it feels like there are a range out there. I think you and I have both kind of demoed like an interviewer question prompting tool,
Mm,
and I think that actually feels really cool. We've probably
mhm.
both been in interviewers where the interviewer kind of starts to go off on a tangent, and you're like, no, 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 I want to get back to like my
I need
qualifications.
to say my point. Yeah.
Right. And that feels like that could be like a helpful redirecting resource.
Mhm.
Um, on the other extreme, I know that there are for a number of, more kind of, high volume hiring roles. You can think of like warehouse workers or call center
Mm.
workers, actual interviews that are not with a human, but with like
Yeah.
a machine on the other side. That's got to be freaky. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen or demoed those, but like that, one-way
I
interaction
demoed
is
one, but the
bizarre.
voice was terrible. It was
Yeah.
like I did feel like I was talking to a robot. I was like, this is not ready yet. It'll
Yeah.
be great when it is, but it's not ready yet.
Yeah, no, no, totally. And similarly, I think this idea of recording and kind of transcripting interviews can be very helpful on the interviewer side. As
Uh-huh.
it on the flip side, as a candidate side, I'm someone who loves to grow and learn from my experience. We've all wished we would have not only a preparatory coach, but a coach in the session say, hey, you could be more succinct. Your answers are
Yeah.
going on too long. Have you ever had
Yeah.
anyone like ask on the candidate side to record or transcript kind of the conversation?
I haven't, but I have seen a post about this recently. And there was really strong opinions on the not allowing people to record it side, which surprised me and they were coming at it from a standpoint of, what if you discuss something that's, private information, and
Mhm.
first of all, I'm not sure you should be speaking about highly confidential things in an interview.
Sure.
If you are at that point and the role is that senior, then of course you're within your rights to say, would prefer if this one wasn't recorded. But I don't see the harm in it myself. I think it's
Yeah.
great to be able to have a transcript and reflect back on it. If somebody did ask me, like, hey, can I record this session? I'd be like, sure,
Yeah. No,
no
I think
problem.
this is the frontier that, once the labor market starts to loosen up again and candidates feel a little bit more empowered, this is kind of, it feels like this is one direction candidates are going to want to learn from, how to interview better. I think this is a natural way for them to grow and to get those transcripts, and AI feedback is a future direction that perhaps we're not quite there at this moment, but in a year or two, I
I
fully
think
expect.
I think in the next 12 months, companies are really going to have to put their policies in place for what they will and won't accept from candidates in terms of
Mm.
AI use during interviews.
Yeah.
And it's a personal choice. I wouldn't tell a company what to do necessarily. They've got to assess their own appetite for it. But to not have a policy around it, so you've got some guidance for the people that are place in taking part in these interviews, I think is a little bit like it's unfair putting it on the individual. Like you're going to have to sit down and think about it. Like if you're okay with it, let them know. If you're not, that's your
Yeah.
policy.
Yeah, great. I mean, so just to like wrap up this conversation,
Mhm.
it sounds like you're excited. I think this is one of the most exciting topics when it comes to AI applications and in hiring and recruiting. On one level, there are some wildly simple but like hugely kind of impactful advances around scheduling and coordinating that we talked
Mhm.
about initially. At the kind of tail end of the interviewing kind of process, it feels like there are both kind of current and future applications of AI transcripting, coaching when it
Mhm.
comes to improving interviewer consistency and getting candidates actionable, real feedback so that everyone can grow and improve. So
Totally.
this is for
Yeah.
me, interviewing is one of the most exciting areas kind of AI applications. I'm really excited to continue to watch it. And in our next conversation, we're going to jump into AI applications in offers, rejections, and onboarding. So, one of the touchier topics. Hopefully,
I know.
everyone found this helpful and kind of will join us for the next conversation too.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Good to see you again, Aaron.
Thanks, Amy.